Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the New Dawn, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. The ship drifted in space near the dying colony of New Texas, and everything around them felt wrong. 6 months had passed since they sent their last distress signal, and still no answer came from anywhere in the galaxy. Commander Lisa Harper walked up to him with a data pad in her hands. Her face looked tired, like everyone else on the ship these days. She had been his tactical officer for 8 years, and he had never seen her look this worried before. The news she carried would make everything worse. "Admiral, the final vote came through from the Galactic Council," she said quietly. "It was unanimous. Every single species voted to eliminate humanity from the galaxy." Morrison felt something cold settle in his chest. He had expected this news, but hearing it still hit him hard. The Galactic Council represented over 200 different alien species, and now every one of them wanted humans dead. Not just defeated or contained, but completely wiped out. "What about the Altarians?" he asked. "They called us honored friends for 20 years. "They voted yes too," Harper replied. "Intelligence reports say they are hunting our ships in the Vega sector now. The peaceful Vegan traders have closed all hyperspace routes to human space. Even the Centaurians, who we saved from the Plague Wars, have joined the coalition against us." Morrison turned away from the viewing screen and walked to the central command table. A hologram showed their current military strength, and the numbers made him feel sick. 47 warships, most of them damaged from recent battles. 30,000 Marines scattered across 12 different outposts that were failing one by one. No allies anywhere in the known galaxy. Colonel Pete Williams joined them at the command table. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from the Proxima campaign. Williams had been coordinating their ground forces for the past year, trying to hold impossible positions with too few soldiers. He looked at the tactical display and shook his head. "Sir, we just lost contact with the garrison on Kepler Prime," Williams reported. "That leaves us with 11 outposts, and half of those are barely hanging on. The Zephyrian coalition is moving faster than we expected." "How many ships are they bringing?" Morrison asked. Williams touched the hologram controls, and the display changed to show enemy fleet movements. Red dots filled the space around human territory like a swarm of angry insects. Intelligence estimates show at least 3,000 warships converging on our position. Maybe more. They are not taking any chances with us. Captain Helen Davis entered the command center at that moment. She was one of their best ship commanders, and she had fought in more battles than anyone else in the fleet. Her uniform was clean, but Morrison could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Davis had just returned from a scouting mission that nearly got her killed. "Admiral, I have a report from the front lines," Davis said. She activated a small recording device, and alien voices filled the room. The translation program turned their words into English, but the hatred in their voices needed no translation. "The humans must be destroyed completely," one alien commander was saying. "They are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Every war they fight makes them stronger. Every battle teaches them new ways to kill. They are not like other species. They are predators that learn from violence." Morrison listened to the recording and felt something change inside him. For years, humanity had tried to be good members of the galactic community. They had followed the rules, helped other species, and tried to prove they were civilized. Now he understood that none of it had mattered. "They fear us," Davis said when the recording ended. "Not because we are evil, but because we are good at war. Every conflict we have fought, every battle we have won or lost, has taught us something new. They watched us fight the siege worlds and learn how to break energy barriers. They saw us defeat the crystalline Andromedans and master zero-gravity combat. We have been in situations that would destroy other species, and we found ways to survive." Harper brought up another display showing human military history. Battle after battle filled the screen, stretching back for decades. Conflicts on ice worlds, desert planets, gas giant moons, and deep space. Humans had fought in every environment the galaxy could offer, and they had learned from each one. "The aliens are right about one thing," Williams said grimly. "We do get stronger from every war." Most species avoid conflict whenever possible. They fight only when they have no choice, and they try to end battles quickly. But humans, we study warfare like other species study art or science. Morrison walked back to the viewing screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, thousands of alien ships were moving toward them with one goal: to end humanity forever. The smart thing to do would be to surrender or try to run. But as he looked at his officers, he realized that surrender was not really an option. These were not the kind of people who gave up even when giving up made sense. "Sir," Harper said carefully, "what are your orders?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment, thinking about all the human soldiers scattered across the galaxy, men and women who had fought on 100 different worlds, who had learned to survive in conditions that would kill most other beings. They were out there right now, fighting hopeless battles and winning anyway because that was what humans did. He turned to face his command staff and made a decision that would change everything. "Activate the Broken Arrow protocol," he said. "Send the recall signal to every human soldier in the galaxy." "Sir?" Williams said with surprise. "Broken Arrow is for evacuation procedures. Are we pulling everyone back to Earth?" "No," Morrison replied. "We are calling them back to fight. Every veteran, every soldier, every Marine who has learned how to win impossible battles. The aliens want to see what happens when humanity fights for survival. Let's show them what 1,000 wars have taught us." Davis smiled for the first time in weeks. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the expression of someone who had fought too many battles to be afraid of one more. "Should we send them coordinates for the rendezvous?" "Send them everything, Morrison. Send them fleet positions, enemy strength, tactical assessments. Let them know exactly what they are walking into. If we are going to make our last stand, we might as well do it properly." Harper began entering commands into the communication system. Soon, the recall signal would reach every corner of human space, calling back soldiers who had learned to fight in ways that frightened even their enemies. The recall signal reached Sergeant First Class Ron Carter while he was fighting for his life on the ice planet Hoth 7. His squad was trapped in a canyon, with Zephyrian shock troops closing in from 3 directions. Carter had been in similar situations 17 times before on different worlds, and he knew exactly what to do. Johnson set charges on the ice wall above the pass. He called to his demolitions expert. "Martinez, get ready to provide covering fire when they come through." The signal came through on his helmet radio as enemy plasma bolts lit up the canyon walls around them. Carter listened to Admiral Morrison's message while ducking behind a boulder. Every human soldier in the galaxy was being called back for one final battle. The odds were terrible, but Carter had never cared much about odds. "Serge, what are we going to do?" asked Private Johnson. He was young and had only been in Carter's squad for 6 months. The kid was good with explosives, but he still got nervous when the shooting started. "We are going home," Carter replied. He triggered the ice wall charges and watched tons of frozen rock collapse on the Zephyrian position. "But first we finish this fight." 2,000 light-years away, Major Beth Rodriguez received the same signal while leading her special operations team through the jungles of Kepler Prime. They had been fighting a guerrilla war against coalition forces for 3 years, and Rodriguez had turned her soldiers into ghosts that struck without warning and vanished before the enemy could respond. Her team was preparing to ambush a supply convoy when the recall message played through their communication system. Rodriguez listened while watching enemy vehicles move through the jungle below their position. She had fought on 23 different worlds and learned something new from each battle. "Ma'am, are we really going back?" whispered Corporal Davis. Her sniper rifle was trained on the lead vehicle, waiting for Rodriguez's signal to fire. "Yes, but not yet," Rodriguez replied. "This convoy has medical supplies that could save human lives elsewhere. We take it first, then we go home." The ambush lasted exactly 4 minutes. Rodriguez's team had learned to hit hard and fast, using tactics that would confuse and terrify the enemy. They had studied how other species fought and found ways to turn their own methods against them. The Zephyrians liked to use overwhelming force, so Rodriguez had learned to make small forces seem larger through misdirection and psychological warfare. In the asteroid fields of the Outer Rim, Lieutenant Colonel Greg Miller sat in the command center of an abandoned mining station. For 2 years, The Coalition had believed he and his electronic warfare unit were dead. That was exactly what Miller wanted them to think. Dead men could move freely through enemy space and strike targets that living soldiers could never reach. Miller's specialty was turning enemy technology against itself. He had learned this skill during the Rebellion Wars when human forces were always outnumbered and outgunned. If you could not match the enemy's strength, you found ways to make them fight themselves instead. "Colonel, we just intercepted the recall signal," reported Lieutenant Adams. She was one of 12 specialists who worked with Miller in the shadows between stars. They called themselves the Ghost Unit, and the Coalition had no idea they existed. "How long until we can reach the rendezvous point?" Miller asked while studying tactical displays that showed enemy fleet movements. 48 hours if we take the direct route," Adams replied. "But sir, there are 3 Coalition fleets between us and human space." Miller smiled and began entering commands into the station's computer system. He had been planning something special for the Coalition fleets, and the recall signal gave him the perfect opportunity to test his latest virus program. "We are not going around them, Lieutenant. We are going through them." Captain Susan Clark received Morrison's message while her stealth frigate drifted silently through a formation of enemy battleships. Her crew had perfected the art of invisible warfare, learned from dozens of missions where discovery meant death. They could move through enemy fleets like sharks swimming among sleeping fish. "Captain, new orders from Fleet Command," reported her communications officer. "All units are being recalled for a final engagement." Clark studied the enemy ships around her position. 12 massive battleships, each one capable of destroying her frigate with a single shot. But they could not hit what they could not see. And Clark's ship had been invisible for so long that she sometimes forgot what it felt like to fight a fair battle. "Set course for the rendezvous point," she ordered. "But first, let's leave our friends here a farewell gift." What happened next took exactly 30 seconds. Clark's ship fired a spread of torpedoes at the enemy flagship, then vanished back into the darkness before the explosions even registered on Coalition sensors. By the time they realized they were under attack, the ghost ship was already light years away. The soldiers responding to Morrison's call shared certain characteristics that made them different from other species' military forces. They had never known victory without sacrifice, never won a battle without paying in blood, and never faced an enemy they would not eventually find a way to kill. More importantly, they had learned these lessons not from one war or two, but from 1,000 different conflicts across the galaxy. Each battle had taught them something new. Fighting the crystalline Andromedans had shown them how to conduct zero-gravity combat. The war against the siege worlds had taught them to break energy barriers that other species considered impenetrable. Conflicts with hive-mind species had revealed the secrets of psychological warfare. But the most important lesson they had learned was that humans adapted faster than any other species in the galaxy. Other races developed one way of fighting and stuck with it for centuries. Humans changed their tactics with every battle, learning from both victories and defeats. Sergeant Carter's squad finally broke free from the trap on Hoth 7 by using demolition techniques learned from tunnel fighting on 3 different worlds. Major Rodriguez's team escaped Kepler Prime by employing stealth methods originally developed for combat in the gas clouds of Jupiter. Lieutenant Colonel Miller's virus attack on the Coalition fleets used code-breaking skills perfected during the encryption wars of the inner colonies. These were not heroes coming to save the day. They were apex predators returning to familiar hunting grounds, and they brought with them the accumulated knowledge of every battle humanity had ever fought. The Coalition forces tracking their movements began to realize they might have made a serious mistake in forcing this confrontation. The ghost ships, invisible strike teams, and electronic warfare specialists were converging on Admiral Morrison's position not because they believed they could win, but because they understood something that their enemies did not. Veterans of 1,000 wars did not fight for victory or glory or even survival. They fought because fighting was what they had learned to do better than anyone else in the galaxy. As the recall signal reached the farthest corners of human space, battle-hardened soldiers began their journey home, carrying with them the brutal wisdom of countless conflicts and the grim determination of people who had learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to become more dangerous than everything trying to kill you. The human fleet gathered at the edge of the Centauri system looked pathetic compared to the massive coalition armada waiting for them. Admiral Morrison counted 87 ships under his command, most of them damaged from recent battles. The enemy force spread across space in front of them numbered over 3,000 vessels, representing every major species in the galaxy. Commander Harper stood beside Morrison on the bridge of the New Dawn, studying tactical displays that showed the impossible odds they faced. The coalition had arranged their ships in perfect formations, each species maintaining its traditional fighting patterns. The Zephyrians formed dense attack groups designed to overwhelm enemy positions through sheer firepower. The Altarians spread their vessels in elegant defensive lines that could absorb massive damage while protecting their support ships. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Coalition flagship," reported the communications officer. The main screen, activated to show Admiral Zexhai of the Zephyrian Empire. His reptilian features twisted into what humans had learned to recognize as a smile of satisfaction. Behind him stood representatives from dozens of species, all united in their desire to end humanity forever. "Admiral Morrison," Zexhai said, in perfect English, "you are outnumbered 35 to 1. Your species has caused enough trouble for the galaxy. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Morrison looked at his own officers, then back at the screen. Colonel Williams had arrived from the surface with the last of their ground forces. Captain Davis stood ready at her combat station, her face showing the calm expression of someone who had fought too many hopeless battles to be intimidated by one more. Major Rodriguez had returned from her mission with intelligence that would prove crucial in the coming fight. "Admiral Zexhai," Morrison replied, "humanity appreciates your generous offer. Captain Clark will deliver our response personally." The transmission ended, and Zexhai probably spent several seconds wondering what Morrison meant by that statement. He found out when Clark's stealth frigate materialized inside the Coalition formation, fired a full spread of torpedoes at the flagship, and vanished again before the enemy sensors could lock onto her position. The Coalition flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the entire system. Admiral Zexhai and his council of species representatives died without ever seeing the ship that killed them. What followed was not a traditional space battle between organized fleets. It was a systematic demonstration of everything humans had learned from fighting wars that other species would never dream of attempting. Major Rodriguez's boarding teams launched from hidden positions throughout the human fleet. They had perfected their techniques during conflicts with the crystalline Andromedans, learning to fight in environments where conventional tactics meant instant death. The Coalition ships were not prepared for enemies who could operate in zero gravity, vacuum conditions, and hostile atmosphere simultaneously. Rodriguez's Marines cut through enemy hull plating using breach techniques that turned the Coalition's own atmospheric pressure against them. Once inside, they moved through ship corridors with the terrible patience of soldiers who had cleared 10,000 similar vessels on 100 different worlds. They knew exactly where to place charges for maximum structural damage and precisely how to turn life support systems into weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Miller's electronic warfare teams struck at the same moment the boarding actions began. They had spent years learning how to weaponize enemy technology, and the Coalition's advanced communication networks became their greatest vulnerability. Miller's virus program spread through the enemy fleet like a plague, turning their own computers against them. The Altarians discovered that their quantum-encrypted communication systems could be turned into feedback loops that overloaded their ship's power cores. The Vegan traders found their peaceful trading algorithms converted into targeting systems that made their vessels attack each other. Miller had studied every major species technology during decades of conflict, and now he used that knowledge to turn their strengths into fatal weaknesses. Sergeant Carter led boarding parties that demonstrated why human ground forces terrified even veteran alien warriors. His Marines fought with the relentless efficiency of soldiers who had learned to survive in conditions that would kill most other beings. They did not fight with honor or restraint. They fought to win, using every brutal lesson learned from wars. Across the galaxy, Carter's squad moved through an enemy battleship like a natural disaster, destroying everything that could threaten human lives and capturing everything that could be used as a weapon. They had learned vacuum combat from fighting the Void Stalkers, close-quarters battle techniques from the urban wars on New Chicago, and psychological warfare methods from conflicts with hive mind species. The Coalition commanders watched in horror as their technological advantages became meaningless against enemies who had already fought every possible variation of space combat. The Zephyrians' invincible phalanx formations crumbled against boarding tactics humans had developed during the Siege World campaigns. The Altarians' energy weapons proved useless against armor configurations designed to survive plasma storms on hostile worlds. Captain Davis led a desperate assault on a Coalition dreadnought that showcased exactly why human ship commanders were considered the most dangerous in the galaxy. Her cruiser was outgunned 10-1, but Davis had learned something during the Proxima campaign that the enemy did not understand. Sometimes the smaller ship could win by making the larger ship fight in ways it was not designed for. Davis used the system's asteroid field as both cover and weapon, guiding massive rocks into collision courses with enemy vessels, while her own ship danced between the debris like a fighter craft. She had fought in every conceivable environment and learned to weaponize all of them. Space dust became a blinding cloud, solar radiation became a targeting disruption, and gravity wells became ship-killing traps. The battle reached its turning point when the Coalition forces realized they were not fighting a conventional engagement. This was not a last stand by a desperate species. This was a hunting expedition by apex predators who had evolved beyond the normal limits of warfare. Captain Clark's stealth ships appeared and disappeared throughout the enemy formation like ghosts, striking at command vessels and supply ships before vanishing back into the darkness. Each attack followed patterns learned from asymmetric warfare campaigns, where human forces had been outnumbered and outgunned, but had found ways to turn those disadvantages into weapons. Colonel Williams coordinated the ground assault teams with the precision of someone who had managed impossible logistics for decades. His Marines knew exactly how to move through enemy ships, which systems to target first, and how to maintain communication in the chaos of close-quarters combat. They had learned these skills not from training simulations, but from real battles, where mistakes meant death. As Coalition ships began to retreat in disorder, the true nature of human military evolution became clear. These were not soldiers with experience. These were weapons forged by 1,000 conflicts, each one teaching them new ways to survive and kill. They had learned to fight in every environment the galaxy could offer, against every type of enemy that existed, using every possible combination of tactics and technology. The retreating Coalition forces left behind more than just damaged ships and dead crews. They carried with them the knowledge that humanity was not just another species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. They were evolution's answer to permanent warfare, and they had just demonstrated why 1,000 wars had made them the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. The battle for the Centauri system entered its final phase when Admiral Morrison authorized the use of protocols that other species would consider unthinkable. Colonel Williams received the Scorched Earth Order and began implementing strategies that bordered on madness. Disabled human ships, their crews already evacuated, became massive bombs that tore through Coalition formations with devastating effect. This was not desperation. This was calculated ruthlessness, born from 100 similar battles where survival required sacrificing everything for strategic advantage. Williams had learned these techniques during the Outer Colony Wars, where human forces often found themselves trapped with no hope of rescue. The only choice was to make their destruction so costly that the enemy would think twice about attacking other human positions. "Sir, the Melbourne is reporting critical damage to their reactor core," reported the tactical officer aboard the New Dawn. "Captain Torres requests permission to evacuate his crew." "Granted," Morrison replied without hesitation. "Tell Captain Torres to set collision course for the largest enemy battleship in his sector. Make sure his crew gets clear first." The Melbourne, a heavy cruiser that had served humanity for 15 years, became a guided missile weighing 50,000 tons. When it struck the Coalition battleship, both vessels vanished in an explosion that could be seen from the outer planets. The human crew had escaped in life pods, but 2,000 alien warriors died in an instant because they had never learned to fight enemies willing to sacrifice their own ships for tactical advantage. Captain Clark coordinated a fleet action that demonstrated why humans had become the masters of environmental warfare. Using the asteroid field that surrounded Centauri's outer planets, her stealth teams guided massive rocks into collision courses with enemy capital ships. The maneuver required precise timing and perfect knowledge of orbital mechanics, but humans had fought in similar conditions dozens of times before. Target the command vessel first, Clark ordered her squadron leaders. Take out their coordination, and the rest of the formation will break apart. Her ships moved through the asteroid field like hunters who had spent their entire lives learning the terrain. Each pilot knew exactly how to use gravitational forces, solar wind, and debris clouds to mask their approach. These were skills learned not from peaceful exploration, but from decades of combat in every possible space environment. The coalition began to fracture as different species realized they were not fighting a conventional war. The Altarians, who had once called humans their honored friends, were the first to understand what they had gotten themselves into. Their elegant battle formations, designed for civilized warfare between honorable opponents, crumbled under assault techniques that seemed to come from nightmares. Sergeant Carter's boarding teams demonstrated exactly why human ground forces had earned their terrifying reputation across the galaxy. His Marines did not just neutralize enemy threats. They systematically destroyed crew morale through psychological warfare tactics learned from campaigns against hive-mind species. Carter's squad moved through enemy ships like a plague, leaving behind scenes that would haunt survivor reports for generations. They knew exactly how to break alien psychology because they had fought every major species in the galaxy and learned their weaknesses. Fear was just another weapon, and humans had become experts at using it. Johnson, plant charges on their life. Support junction, Carter ordered while his team secured another enemy vessel. Make sure they hear the countdown. Fear of suffocation works on almost every oxygen-breathing species. Major Rodriguez led an assault on the Coalition command vessel that showcased the horrifying efficiency of human special operations. Her team did not simply disable enemy systems. They turned the ship's own crew against each other using disinformation tactics perfected during the Rebellion Wars. Rodriguez had learned that most alien species trusted their technology more than their instincts. By feeding false information into their communication networks, she could make enemy commanders believe their own allies were betraying them. The technique worked especially well on species that had never experienced true treachery in their military hierarchies. Plant the data virus in their command computers, she told Corporal Davis while explosions echoed through the ship's corridors. Make it look like half their fleet is preparing to switch sides. Let them destroy each other for us. The psychological assault worked exactly as planned. Within minutes, coalition ships were firing on each other as panicked commanders tried to eliminate suspected traitors in their own ranks. Rodriguez's team escaped in the chaos, leaving behind an enemy force that had been turned into its own worst enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Miller's cyber warfare unit achieved something that would become legendary in the annals of human military history. They took complete control of the Coalition's fleet coordination systems and implemented a virus protocol that caused enemy ships to target each other automatically. This electronic warfare capability had been developed over decades of fighting technologically superior enemies. "Sir, we have full access to their tactical networks," reported Lieutenant Adams from her position in the Electronic Warfare Center. "Should we shut down their weapons systems?" "No," Miller replied with the cold smile of someone who understood exactly how to turn advanced technology into a weapon of mass destruction. "We are going to make them shoot each other, upload the fratricidal targeting program, and let their own computers do our work for us." The virus spread through the Coalition, fleet like wildfire, turning their most advanced systems against them. Ships that had never fired a shot in anger suddenly began attacking their closest allies. The effect was devastating not just physically, but psychologically. How could any species trust their technology again after watching it betray them so completely? As Coalition forces retreated in growing disorder, the true cost of human victory became apparent to Admiral Morrison. Of the 87 ships that had begun the battle, only 23 remained functional. Casualty reports poured in through the communication system like drops of poison. Carter had been wounded during his final boarding assault, but was still fighting with his left arm in a medical brace. Rodriguez's special operations team had been reduced to half strength after their mission aboard the enemy command ship. Captain Davis was presumed dead after her cruiser had been destroyed during the final assault phase, though her crew had managed to escape in life pods. The survivors were not celebrating their victory. They were already planning for the next battle, because veterans of 1,000 wars understood something that other species did not. Victory only bought time until the next conflict began, and enemies who retreated today would return tomorrow with new weapons and better tactics. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Altarian fleet," reported the communications officer. "They are requesting a separate ceasefire." Morrison studied the tactical display showing enemy ships fleeing in all directions. The coalition was breaking, apart as each species realized that fighting humans meant accepting casualties that would cripple their civilizations for generations. They had expected to crush a primitive species through overwhelming force. Instead, they had learned why humanity had survived every conflict the galaxy could throw at them. "Tell the Altarians we will consider their proposal," Morrison replied, "after we finish securing the battlefield." The human fleet moved through the debris field like scavengers, collecting useful technology and rescuing survivors from both sides. This was not mercy. This was practical military thinking learned from wars where every resource mattered, and every enemy could provide valuable intelligence for future conflicts. Colonel Williams coordinated the massive logistics operation with the efficiency of someone who had managed similar cleanups dozens of times before. Damaged human ships were either repaired or stripped for parts. Enemy vessels were studied for technological advantages that could be incorporated into human designs. Even the dead provided useful information about alien biology and psychology. As the Centauri system slowly returned to silence, the surviving human forces understood that they had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not just won a battle against overwhelming odds. They had demonstrated to every species in the galaxy exactly what it meant to face opponents who learned from every conflict and improved with every defeat. Admiral Morrison stood in the observation deck of the New Dawn, watching salvage teams work among the wreckage scattered across the Centauri system. 3 days had passed since the Coalition retreat, and the debris field stretched for millions of kilometers in all directions. The remains of both fleets drifted in the darkness like a monument to the cost of victory. Captain Clark's ship limped back toward the human formation, her hull scarred from impacts that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Her crew had been operating on stimulants and muscle memory for the past 48 hours, but they had completed their mission. The stealth frigate's sensors had tracked the retreating Coalition forces all the way to the edge of human space. "Admiral, Captain Clark reports that enemy forces are regrouping beyond the outer rim," Commander Harper announced as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "But their formation is scattered and disorganized. Several species have broken away from the main fleet." Morrison nodded as he studied the tactical displays. The Coalition retreat had given humanity breathing room, but at a cost that would have broken any other species. 2/3 of their remaining military force was gone, and the survivors were exhausted beyond measure. Yet they had achieved something that would echo across the galaxy for generations. "What about the separate peace negotiations?" Morrison asked. "The Altarians have opened secret communications channels," Harper replied. "They are offering to withdraw from the Coalition entirely in exchange for non-aggression guarantees. The Vegan traders are already pulling back from the alliance. Intelligence suggests at least 6 other species are reconsidering their positions." Colonel Williams entered the observation deck carrying a datapad filled with casualty reports and resource assessments. His face showed the strain of coordinating a victory that had required sacrificing everything they had built over decades. The cost of surviving this battle would reshape human civilization for years to come. "Sir, final damage assessment is complete," Williams reported. "We lost 64 ships and approximately 18,000 personnel. The wounded number in the tens of thousands. Our remaining forces are barely sufficient to defend the core colonies." Morrison absorbed the numbers without showing emotion. He had commanded military operations for 25 years, and he understood that victory always came with a price. The question was whether that price had purchased something worth having. In this case, he believed it had. "What about our captured intelligence?" Morrison asked. Williams consulted his datapad before answering. Major Rodriguez's teams recovered extensive files from the Coalition command vessel before its destruction. The enemy had been monitoring human conflicts for decades, but they fundamentally misunderstood what they were seeing. "Explain." "They saw our constant wars as evidence of a flawed species," Williams continued. "They believed that a civilization that fought so many conflicts was too unstable to survive. They never realized that each war was teaching us something new, that we were not just fighting battles but perfecting the art of warfare itself." Sergeant Carter appeared in the observation deck, his left arm still in a regeneration sleeve but otherwise functional. He had refused medical leave despite his injuries, insisting that his squad needed his leadership during the post-battle reorganization. Carter represented something that the Coalition had never understood about human military culture. "Sir, we have completed the interrogation of captured enemy personnel," Carter reported. "The prisoners are requesting immediate repatriation to their homeworlds. They seem genuinely terrified of remaining in human custody." "What did you learn from them?" Morrison asked. Carter's expression showed the grim satisfaction of a professional soldier who had confirmed his worst suspicions about the enemy. "They did not retreat because we defeated them militarily, sir. They retreated because they finally understood what human veterans really meant. We are not just soldiers with experience. We are evolution's answer to permanent warfare." Major Rodriguez joined the group, returning from her final intelligence-gathering mission with data that would change humanity's understanding of their place in the galaxy. She had spent the past 3 days analyzing captured Coalition technology and communication intercepts, searching for patterns that might reveal their enemy's true capabilities. "Admiral, I have something you need to see," Rodriguez said as she activated a portable hologram projector. The Coalition command structure was more fragile than we realized. Their alliance was held together by fear of human expansion, not by genuine cooperation between species. The hologram showed a complex web of relationships between different alien civilizations. Morrison could see dozens of potential fracture points where fear, territorial disputes, and resource competition created tensions that human forces could exploit in future conflicts. "They were never really united," Rodriguez continued. "Each species joined the Coalition because they believed humans posed an existential threat to their way of life. When we demonstrated that we could defeat their combined forces, that fear turned into something else entirely." "What kind of something else?" Morrison asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Respect," Rodriguez replied, "and the realization that humanity might be a more valuable ally than enemy. The captured communications show that several species are already discussing how to establish diplomatic relations with us. They want to be on the winning side next time." Lieutenant Colonel Miller arrived at the observation deck, carrying the results of his electronic warfare assessment. His cyber attacks during the battle had provided crucial intelligence about Coalition technology and communication protocols. More importantly, they had demonstrated human capabilities that would influence alien strategic thinking for decades. "Admiral, we need to discuss the long-term implications of what we accomplished here," Miller said with the serious expression of someone who understood exactly how much the galaxy had changed. "Our electronic warfare capabilities are now known to every major species. They will redesign their systems specifically to counter our techniques. That assumes they can match our adaptive capabilities," Morrison replied. "How long do you think it will take them to develop effective countermeasures?" Miller considered the question while studying his own tactical analysis. "Based on their historical innovation patterns, at least 10 to 15 years. But sir, that misses the larger point. We have demonstrated that human technology can turn their own systems against them. That knowledge will affect every decision they make from now on." Morrison walked back to the main viewing screen and stared out at the debris field where so many ships and lives had been lost. The victory at Centauri had proven something that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity was not just another species struggling to survive in a hostile universe. They were apex predators who had learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy other civilizations. "What are your recommendations for our next actions?" Morrison asked his command staff. "We established defensive positions around Earth and the remaining colonies," Williams replied immediately. "Not because we are content with survival, but because we have learned the most important lesson of warfare. True veterans know when to fight and when to let the enemy's fear do the work for them." Harper nodded in agreement. "Intelligence reports indicate that news of the Centauri battle is spreading throughout the galaxy faster than we expected. Some species are already withdrawing from territories near human space. Others are requesting permission to establish trade relations. The coalition is finished as a military threat," Rodriguez added. "Their member species will spend the next decade arguing about who is responsible for the defeat and how to prevent future disasters. By the time they resolve their internal conflicts, we will have rebuilt our forces and expanded our technological capabilities." Morrison made his decision with the calm certainty of someone who had learned to think strategically under impossible pressure. Instead of pursuing the retreating coalition forces, he would order the human fleet to establish defensive positions around their remaining territory, not because humanity was satisfied with mere survival, but because they had learned something that their enemies had not. "Send new orders to all fleet commanders," Morrison announced. "We are not pursuing the retreating enemy forces. We are going to let them live with the knowledge of what happened here and wonder when we might decide to demonstrate our capabilities again." As the human fleet took up defensive positions throughout the Centauri system, alien civilizations across the galaxy received detailed reports of the battle that would influence their policies for generations. A new understanding spread through their cultures like wildfire. Humanity was not just defending itself during the conflict. They had been demonstrating why a species that survived 1,000 wars might be the most dangerous ally or enemy the galaxy had ever known. The final scene of the great battle showed the survivors of the human fleet standing watch over their hard-won territory. They were not heroes in any traditional sense. They were simply what happened when evolution, desperation, and endless conflict forged a species into something that refused to lose. No allies had appeared when humanity needed them most, but perhaps that had been for the best.